I'm going to make you a hard question now. You mentioned a lot of organizations that you're working with, some of the top leagues, clubs, and sport organizations in the world. Who's your favorite? Who's making the best use of Greenfly in terms of leveraging the platform and really using that distribution and enable athletes and broadcasters and partners to use their content?
Oh, again, hard one. And favorite, it's like, it's like a parent. Parents, you can't have favorites. So I have many favorites. But I can definitely call out some of the ones that do it really well. Again, I mentioned the DFL already. They've got a great program in place, Matchday Social, whereby they lean on the club social reporters to be able to capture that content and power that program, which again, I think from a resourcing point of view, it's a really clever way to go about it. You don't need to take on some of that burden from a resource point of view. They actually outsource that to the club reporters to be able to capture that content, which again is made available back to the clubs, but equally to the international broadcasters who don't necessarily have the resources to have folks every single week on the ground. So they do a really good job. Even, again, I'll talk about another European example and then I'll mention one from the US. I'd say someone like CellGP, for instance, they do a really good job at empowering their teams and the athletes. And again, CellGP is a league that's very much focused around remote content production as well. So that's where, again, some technologies like Greenfly come into place to be able to enable that effectively. And then, from a US point of view, obviously, you see some really cool stuff happening from the American leagues. If it is someone like the NBA, for instance, the way that they operate these programs, but equally the way that they make available this content back to the players, they do that really well, which is probably different and a contrast to what we see in European leagues, just because of the way that rights work. It's a little bit more complex for European leagues to be able to distribute content to the athletes from a rights restriction point of view, although that is changing. You're seeing more and more leagues relax that and give access to athletes because of all of the reasons that we talked about earlier. I would say the US and the American leagues are probably in a different position where for them it's those restrictions are more relaxed and they can empower the athletes in a different way.
Yeah, because if we think about social media in general, people tend to follow more people than brands.
Yeah.
And that transfer to the sport, I think it's the best example of that. If you take all the sport organization in the world, I think except 2-3 exceptions like Real Madrid, FC Barcelona, and Manchester United, in all sport organizations you have at least one player that has more followers than the whole organization itself. If you take the NBA, LeBron James have more players than the league and all the teams.
Yeah.
So we are in a moment where everything has changed, and I like to quote here Sir Alex Ferguson a lot. He used to say, "There's no player bigger than the club," but when you look at social media, that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it is unbelievable, and I think we're seeing that more and more. It's more prominent, it's more in front of us. And I'd say, again, I want to talk about women's sports as well. But even when you look at that landscape itself, you're seeing more and more of those figures come to the limelight and to the forefront to be able to elevate the whole sport. The sport. I mean, I know obviously we've heard this time and time again, but you look at some of the things that, Caitlin Clark alone in the WNBA has been able to do, and not just Caitlin, but other high-profile figures
there are
have
many
been able
examples.
to do.
Serena Williams.
That have been able, those figures and what they've been able to do to elevate their respective sports is so important for organizations to double down on that and see the potential and what these athletes can do. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, now that you touch on women's sport, I think the biggest mistake that the women's sport movement is making, And I think, I don't know if it's by default or by the people that are managing the organizations, but the biggest mistake is that they're following exactly the same playbook as the men's game. You know, the Premier League, it took the Premier League years, 20, 30 years to build the value they created today. If now the Women's Super League wants to do the same, they need to play a different game.
Yeah.
If they play by the same playbook of putting the content on TV and try to make media rights revenue and everything, I think they're not going to get there ever. But if you leverage the athletes and what you were mentioning, you find a fast lane to reach that this same level of value. I mean, it's a good debate, but I don't know what's your view in general on women's sports and how the executives are treating the business and especially marketing the product.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it's a tricky one. I think when you look at organizations like the WSL, for instance, I mean, I do think they're doing a great job. You know, it's really exciting what they've been able to do just in a year alone. I think they officially set up as a independent entity last season, and what they've been able to do in a year alone is pretty amazing. Yeah. Both from a broadcasting point of view, they signed the deal with Sky, again, record-breaking figures, and even from a title sponsorship point of view with Barclays as well. That in a year alone is really amazing, and again, will hopefully give, it's helping set up that foundation for the growth of the women's game. Again, if you look at figures as a whole, revenue figures are increasing across WSL teams. Live viewership is also increasing, which is amazing to see. I do agree with some of the comments that you made around organizations needing to take a different approach to the men's, just because of, you know, again, you can't compare like for like. It's completely different where the women's game is at. But I do think a lot, or some at least organizations do realize and see that the need to adapt their approach and not being able just to follow the playbook of the Premier League or another men's league. And I do think you start to see the way that they approach things differently, and probably you see more and more and more. I think there's some really cool examples out there as well from organizations that are trying to be a little bit different to appeal to a wider fan base, whether it's even from a female fan base, and how they do partnerships with brands to being able to go after that fan base. You see a lot of the clubs as well being able to identify, okay, who are going to be the right commercial partners that will be with us as part of this growth and trajectory. And again, I'll go back to the point of like for like. I think obviously women's game, completely different stage. I think when you look at the opportunities, obviously we need that investment from sponsors and commercial brands. And yes, right now from a returns point of view, again, it can't be compared to the men's just because of where viewership and where the audiences lie. But I think as well it's important for sponsors and potential partners to be able to identify and have that long-term vision to see, okay, well, this is where the women's game is at. Where will it be in 2-3 years' time? And how can I be part of that journey? I think that's probably a challenge that a lot of, whether you're a league or whether you're a club, a challenge that you have to being able to identify the right partners that will be part of that journey with you and can, reap the rewards in the long term as well.